June the 15th, 2026. Guys, we're getting reports in of this record-breaking El Nino, and I want to share some of that with you because we're starting to see it, but because it's in the Pacific Ocean and it's a little further south than the U.S. southern border, Central America and Mexico are getting hit by it very hard already, but it's moving into our area. And I said this was going to happen a few weeks ago. We were seeing that high pressure dome set over the desert southwest with moisture through the center. Now that dry area is moving all the way across the nation. Now along the Gulf Coast states, we still have moisture trapped, and we have a tropical system that is ashore in Mexico. But the National Hurricane Center is giving it a 30% chance of moving back out into the Gulf of America, slightly re-strengthening, staying along the Texas and Louisiana border, keeping that moisture coming in. And what a difference a day makes. Yesterday we were getting above 100 easily in heat index and real feel, and extremely high humidity. Right now we're at 77 because of the clouds and the moisture in our area and the buildup of this tropical moisture about to push in. But we're at 77, humidity 99, but with this temperature and the clouds, our real feel is 77 also. Thank you, Father. What can I say? I cannot complain about this at all, because the last few days have been pretty rough. Yesterday we saw 114 on our heat index scale on our independent weather system here. Just one of the small ones, you know, you sit outside, you have the monitor inside, it gives you all your data. Anyway, I like using my own because it's very localized and you can measure it against some of the other things that are happening. But it's a great blessing for this part of the country. We've seen it just the opposite. But now here's where we've got to pay attention to this. It adds into everything else we're talking about. They're saying this year, with the record El Nino, that we could be looking at 2.5 to 3.5 degrees Celsius increase in overall temperature. Now, 3.5 C is 6.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you add that on top of triple-digit temperatures that we've been seeing, and you can get what's called a heat block built up. Guys, listen, that means the nighttime, it may not get below 90 degrees. And that means your body doesn't have much of a chance of natural cooling, and the grid is going to be really overworked tremendously when you have power. But at 6.3, global or regional spikes on top of a baseline warning could represent an unprecedented atmospheric temperature jump. Says the Fahrenheit equivalent of 2.C is a very strong El Nino boundary. But guys, we're looking at up to 3.5, maybe higher. Now, this atmospheric jump of 6.3 degrees Fahrenheit over the baseline temps would essentially look like a permanent hyper-accelerated weather shift that compresses decades of climate change into a single season. Again, Guatemala and those areas are starting to feel this. They're starting to prepare in a way unlike the U.S. is doing. The U.S. is thinking about lowering dams and water restrictions even as it's all running out. But in Central America, in some places, they are actually starting to gather food because they realize the crop loss is coming and the water problems are very bad. Anyway, this atmospheric jump could change everything and change or make it to where decades of climate change happen in a single season. Because the atmosphere behaves like a closed thermodynamic engine, adding that much raw heat causes weather patterns to warp violently rather than just making days feel slightly warmer. First thing that you see as it was building up earlier this year is the death of the high altitude snowpack. Again, the 14,000 foot peaks, we were told 2 weeks ago, have zero snow on them. That means the Green River and the other two tributaries above Flaming Gorge and down through that area are dry. Trickles. All the batteries are gone from Flaming Gorge coming into Powell, and Meade will be affected pretty soon. But at this elevation, 14,000 feet, temperature is the only thing keeping snow frozen. had a 6.3 degree Fahrenheit atmospheric jump as it pushes through these freezing lines thousands of feet above normal. So we saw it start to happen already, building up. There was very warm air last year, and we had very little tropical systems affecting much of the central U.S. at all, mostly East Coast. Now, because of this and that increased temperature, and you have that thermodynamic locking, guys, instead of winter snow accumulating on the Rockies, storms will hit the peaks as warm rain. This triggers immediate catastrophic midwinter flash flooding downstream, leaving the mountains completely bare of snow by the time spring arrives. And the spring summers when they replenish themselves via snowfall. The hotter air acts like a giant atmospheric vacuum. Any moisture that does not hit the ground is instantly sucked back into the air through the evaporation transpiration effect, drying out river basins before the water can even pool. A 6.3 degree Fahrenheit jump changes the physics of the jet stream, causing it to stall and loop aggressively. This creates massive, stubborn, high-pressure systems known as heat domes. Let me show you one. Now, I'm going back 1 month, not a year this time, but 1 month, and let's kind of take a look at what we're seeing. This is the effect of the moisture. What we're looking at is total precipitated or precipitable moisture, okay? Where can it rain? And this is what we were seeing a month ago today. This high-pressure system sitting over the entire Southwest up into the Rockies. Notice the high pressure is locked into Mexico, Central America, and even with the moisture that's coming now from the Gulf of America and from the Pacific Ocean itself along our west coast, we're still seeing it. But what I said then is that this would change. This area right here, because the constant pressure behind it from the El Nino system will push it across the U.S. And that's what we're seeing now. But again, these dry spots down in this area, Guatemala and other places, are getting very serious, and they're starting to prepare for possible starvation, guys. Think about that. Now let's go forward back to today. And you can see now this dry area from the El Nino is doing exactly what I told you it would do. It is going to move across the nation. It's summertime, we expect it to be warmer. But look how it's wiping out the moisture all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Check that out. And what we're seeing is this moisture is basically coming out of the Gulf of America. You can see it moving up the East Coast, kind of following the Gulf Stream itself. But guys, right here, if we move up a little further, into Mexico is our tropical system. Now, that's where a lot of our moisture is coming in through South Texas, Central and South Louisiana, now Mississippi and Alabama. We're getting light sprinkles now. But again, National Hurricane Center says 30% chance of this moving back offshore and up the Texas coast and the Louisiana coast, maybe coming back ashore in here. So it looks like we're going to remain in wet conditions. And by the way, for the last week, central Mississippi and East Mississippi has been in heat warnings. Now we're in flood watches at 77 degrees. It's a strange system for the summer. But again, now we see that dry air being pushed across the nation. So all of you guys in the Gulf states along the East Coast where you're getting this moisture, be very thankful for it. If we have a lag in any of this moisture pushing in during this hurricane season, the entire nation's going to go dry. But let's look at a couple things a little further south down into this area. You notice how dry it is? Let's look at it. Now, in 1950, they didn't have quite the satellite tech we have now, but they're saying, this came out 2 days ago, El Nino arrives and could rank among the strongest events since 1950. And it shows some charts here showing that normal patterns, kind of like last year, you were seeing some of this wind being dispersed from right to left or from east to west across it. The oceans now in the bottom chart, it's not very clear. it's showing everything being pushed into here, and that's what we're seeing. It says the phenomenal El Nino has arrived, the U.S. Weather Agency said Thursday, and scientists expect the pattern synonymous with droughts, floods, and soaring temps will intensify through the end of the year, potentially to a historic strength. Now, it's a natural climate occurrence that warms surface temps in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific Ocean, bringing worldwide changes in winds and rainfall patterns and erratic weather. Look at the tornadoes up through that corridor of moisture that is now shutting off. Scientists fear it will exacerbate the heat of a planet already warming from burning fossil fuels while amplifying weather extremes. El Nino is here, and it could be for the history books. This is coming from a meteorologist, Haley Thiem, in an explainer video from the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Guys, we call them NOAA. It is in its latest advisory, scientists at NOAA said there's a 63% chance of a very strong El Nino during November, January that would rank among the largest, again going back into 1950. It says every El Nino is different, but major events often follow familiar patterns. This includes drought across parts of the Amazon, Indonesia, and Australia, disrupted monsoons in India, and shifting rainfall throughout the tropics, and this year possibly throughout the monsoonal season in the desert Southwest. It typically takes place every 2 to 7 years and lasts around 9 to 12 months. Now think about that. This spring, everything melted off the mountains. If it lasts 12 months, same thing's going to happen next year. Do you realize that's the end of the Colorado River project completely? And there's not going to be much left by then. El Nino tends to peak late in the year, but heat in the oceans release more slowly into the atmosphere, pushing up global temperatures the following year. And scientists from around this planet, guys, are starting to pay attention. It says Mohammed Dow, director of the Nairobi-based climate and energy think tank Power Shift Africa, said for millions of people across the globe, it is not just another weather forecast, but a deadly siren to be feared. It means failed rains, drying crops, rising food prices, and families pushed to the edge yet again. Governments across the dry countries of Central America have raised alert levels over El Nino, again, around the planet. Now, in the Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua area, they're now calling it, and they have before, the dry corridor. It says El Nino's return has triggered fears of drought and stoked concerns of famine. You don't think that's going to spread to the Southwest and to the nation as soon as the Imperial Valley is cut off from the Colorado River? Now, the Guatemalan government is saying it has 1.1 million rations ready to distribute in the face of a food security emergency. Guys, there's about 2 million in the main city, but you got about 20 million in the state of Guatemala or the country of Guatemala. So you got 1/5 of one meal. In other words, 1/5 of the people have enough rations for one meal. And that's gone. So I don't know if they're concentrating around the city or going to spread that out. But at least they're looking at the real numbers and not the crap that we're hearing from the Bureau of Reclamations and, oh, we're going to legislate and cut back on this and let downstream suffer a little bit and do that. No, that's what they're talking about. And what is so naive about that is you're not going to legislate the Colorado River. Nature does that, and she doesn't sign contracts. So instead of them saying, look, like Guatemala's saying right now, if the Imperial Valley and the Arizona Yuma Valley areas realize that they're about to lose a lot of water, then are they preparing food and rations? Or are they just, like a lot of you guys say, a lot of people aren't paying attention. But the government is preparing for itself and to do allocations. But what about the very basic stuff? People got to eat and drink water. But how do you do that? How do you prepare for that? It's physically impossible. but I'm just showing you the difference in the way the governments are looking at it. One is focused on courtroom battles, which are useless, and the other one is focused on surviving or getting as many people past that survival point as possible. Said in East Africa, going back to ADI, he said the extremes will likely strike communities already battered by droughts and floods in recent years. Predictions from elsewhere in the world mirror those of NOAA, anticipating a particularly strong El Nino. The odds are strongly in favor of a moderate to strong or probably strong to record-breaking event at this stage. They're saying the director of Europe's Copernicus Climate Service Change told the AFP. His name is Carlo Buontempo. Now it says earlier this month, UN Chief Antonio Guterres, that's the end of that right there, because we know he's my main grifter, and that's all he's going to say, some way to grift money. But El Nino conditions will pour fuel on the fire of a warming world. The only effective response is climate action. Think about that. Let's stop the oil that's now running out. At least, guys, if you notice, since Trump said for the 20th time that we have peace in the Middle East, man, oil went from 90 to nearly 100, now to $80 a barrel in just a few days. That's a pretty good sign for here, as long as it lasts. They've got to do something to let some of the pressure up on the American people. We've about had it with wars. That's why I don't report on that much anymore. Don't care anything about it or the lies involved in it. But I do like the price of petrol going down. Guys, as we talked about those nations here, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador right here in this area, the dry corridor, right? Well, you can see that the concentration of the people are in the main city areas. And now this is what they're calling the dry corridor, guys. Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. A lot of people through here. Just Guatemala, though, again, about 20 million people live there. And about 2.1 million live in the capital city. If they're in that much trouble, all of these areas, and we're only getting reports from Guatemala right now, then how will the people, and what we're going to see again, just like in going back to Imperial Valley, uses more water than all of Arizona, but you can see why. Look at the size. When that goes down, you're going to have legal migrants that come here every year and do a lot of agricultural work, where they're going to be going back into a dry region also, because they will more than likely, with what's going on in California legally and the shenanigans there, and with the work gone, they're going to be kind of be forced, just like people here in the Southwest will be forced to different areas. Now, I did see a report where you guys in the eastern half of New Mexico got some pretty good rain, and that's a good time to be prepared for, rain barrels and things like that, guys. And for all of us that were seeing the moisture coming up from the tropics and out of the Gulf of America, now's the time for rain barrels, water collection tanks and all, because you see the siphon has been cut off all the way from Washington to California. But in here, our Father's given us a little more time right now to gather as much water as possible. It's called blue gold. Now, that's not all the effects of something happening like this super El Nino. Saying at a 6.3 degree Fahrenheit jump, it changes the physics of the jet stream, causing it to stall and loop, like we talked about. Creates massive, stubborn, high-pressure systems known as heat domes. In places like the Southwest and the Central Plains, a heat dome under this temperature spikes mean weeks on end, while daytime temperatures regularly breach 120 to 125 Fahrenheit. No nighttime relief during this time. The atmosphere traps so much heat the nighttime lows will fail to drop below 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Guys, that's not good for humans or power transformers. Without a cooling period at night, infrastructure like electric transformers overheat and fail, and the human body physically cannot shed heat, leading to rapid heat stroke. Now, some of these other effects, guys, you've got flash drying of vegetation. It causes this exploding wildfire velocity A jump of this magnitude instantly converts forest and grasslands into tinder. The moisture content in living trees drops to levels lower than killed, dried lumber. Think about that. And again, that we talked about the pine beetles after the droughts. It causes pyrocumulus firestorms. Wildfires under these conditions burn so hot. Now, you guys in Mexico, New Mexico, in those mountainous areas, you've seen this before. Burn so hot and fast they generate their own localized weather systems. Massive smoke clouds that produce dry lightning, trapping firefighters and erasing entire mountain towns in hours rather than days. It says the atmosphere and the ocean trade heat constantly. 6.3 degree Fahrenheit atmospheric spike means coastal waters will experience unprecedented marine heat waves. Wildlife will suffer. The marine life will suffer. You'll see storms, higher waves, different tides. It says as the ocean temps heat up, guys, and we know this, it's called a vapor engine, that the moisture feeds directly into tropical storms and hurricanes. While the inland west experience complete desolation and aridification, the coastlines of the Gulf region will face hyper-intense, slow-moving hurricanes that dump unprecedented amounts of water, causing catastrophic flooding alongside the interior drying. We're kind of seeing that right now. The jump essentially strips away the temperate climate buffer that human civilizations was built on, replacing it with a hyper-volatile atmospheric driven by extreme energy. Guys, you get the next 14 days at Meade, triple-digit temps, 0 to 1% chance of humidity or precipitation, and winds averaging 16 to 20 miles per hour. The evap rate is going to skyrocket, guys. We'll be lucky to see Meade make it to July 27th and not break 1035 before then. Now, again, it's not just going to be the vegetation, guys. They're talking about the wet bulb threshold when the body quits. The absolute limit of human survivability is a wet bulb temperature of 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 Celsius. This is not a standard thermometer reading. It measures a combination of heat and humidity. It says the physics of sweeping death at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, wet bulb temperature, the air is so hot and saturated with moisture that human sweat can no longer evaporate. Because evaporation is the body's only way to cool itself, a person sitting perfectly naked in the shade with unlimited water will still overheat and die of heat stroke within 6 hours. The new wet bulb reality, when a 6.3 Fahrenheit global atmospheric jump, and it jumps in the regions along the U.S. Gulf Coast, the Imperial Valley and the Central America will regularly breach this threshold during summer heat domes. That's how dangerous it can become. And that's just with that 6.3 degrees jump, guys. Living in the Southwest or the South will become entirely dependent on an artificial life support system called the power grid. The moment your predicted power grid collapse happens and the air condition cuts off, this is due to, a lot of it's due to over there lack of water, lack of hydropower, and rolling blackouts during the hottest part of the year. But that will move across the nation. We're already seeing it here, guys. Last summer, they blew a new transformer station, not one on the poles, but one of those big ground ones with a high barbed wire fence around them. Just in the middle of the day, it was hot, man, like 115, 120 heat index. And that new system caught on fire. The fire departments had to come out, put it out, but for some miracle, they had a backup of one of the big main ones, the ground setters, and got it replaced in a couple of days. But guys, it was pretty rough. If you don't do anything else, get you a small solar system. Make sure, though, it will take a good charge and run at least one 5,000 BTU. That's the cheap window units, less than $200 for overnight and through the day on solar power. And then the batteries will store enough at night. That way you your family, your pets, whoever can at least have one sanctuary. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now mine, I can run about 3 air conditioners off of the system, as well as a good bit of my other stuff. But I've been building it for years. It's a little simpler now, but what you'll find is in some of the new solar systems, you'll see kind of an all-in-one kit. You've got one big unit that's the inverter, charge control, all the fuses built in, and maybe another big unit that's the battery, right? But there's a problem with that. They can say that separate roll-around battery that's probably a foot high, maybe 2 feet wide, can handle a lot of power. Guys, I've got 12 volt batteries, big ones, solar batteries, and they weigh 600 pounds, those 12. And so you're not going to put that in one of the small carts. Now, I built everything by hand as far as the cabling, wiring, design, all of that over these years. But I can run most of my home all night, if need be. We're just getting to that point. We've added a little bit each year over, I guess, really since Hurricane Katrina. What has that been, 21 years now? My goodness. Anyway, getting to that point. But you can get, again, a system. Put a couple panels, even if you had to put them inside a room because of local ordinances. So you had a spare bedroom that faced south, drop a couple panels in there and keep your batteries charged. Put them on the back. Do whatever you got to do. The key thing is here, water, and you're going to have some AC anywhere just about in the U.S. And you're going to need food. Again, living in the Southwest or the South will become entirely dependent on this artificial life support system, the power grid. The moment you predicted, which we're talking about putting in the measurements and coming into July 27th on the beginning of the grid shutdown and elevating from there to a full shutdown, it's talking about the 95-degree wet bulb environment turns uncooled homes into immediate death traps. It can happen in as little as 15 minutes in the direct sunlight. I've seen it happen. So if you plan to hang wherever you're going to be, then do what I'm telling you. Start looking up solar systems. I mean, I could design you one, but it takes time, and it takes more time to explain it to someone than it does to do it. So that's why I'm saying, you can buy almost everything in one. You have some maybe fold-out panels, which I don't use. I like the hard grid panels. They're more durable. And but you can get those and hook them into these small systems like you see on a camper or going camping, and you plug in a few plugs into it. That'll kind of get you through. It's not going to do what a full system will do, though. But if you can keep one room cool for you, your pets, and your family, you're way ahead of the game. And just like I've warned you about water and about food and long-term survival food, I'm telling you now, and we have some solar stuff on our website. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm not going to do an ad. Then you are being prepared. But if you don't have a little bit of backup power, guys, even as far away as we are from the West Coast, then we see blackouts here. In the last week, I've seen 2 hit around noon. I don't know if they're having to transfer power. I mean, it's long enough to knock everything out, but come right back on. And maybe through a power transfer from one system to the other. I don't know. But I'm getting my gear in line to fully take over if I have to. And with power bills going up and more power companies turning their backs to humans and facing the data centers, it might be a really good idea to do that. Think about it, guys. You got a couple boats or motorcycles or something you're not using or something you could convert to some water and some solar power. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the day to come where there's no supplies because everyone is running to get them and no time to get help to try to figure out how the system works? That's why these all-in-one systems, if you're not an electrician and you don't have a lot of time, are the best way to go. They're basically plug-in. Come in, get you some batteries, or the ones that roll around that match your unit. Get you some panels, and you got some type of backup. Just make sure whatever you get, tell them, I want to be able to run as much air conditioning as possible through the night, because your panels will handle it during the daytime. And the way these systems set up now, you switch it to where in the daytime, it will run from solar power. As soon as the light gets dark, the circuit switches and it starts draining from your batteries. It doesn't all happen at the same time. And then it's say at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, if your power is getting too low to run an air conditioner, it automatically switches to your grid if the grid is on. Or if not, it would switch to a outside generator. They're set up like that. But which, again, that's why on some of the smaller systems, you may make it to daylight, you may not. But that's something to think about. But there's places, there's one in Texas that handle a lot of solar products over there. There's one in called NAS up in, not Albuquerque, but further down into New Mexico. What's it called? Flagstaff. Yeah, Flagstaff. It's called NAZ, North Arizona Electric or something like that. Anyway, they handle it. They ship. They have industrial grade stuff. But if you want to keep it simple, someone like Renogy or a group like that, they specialize more in the simpler systems than the commercial grade inverters and transformers I'm using and been building for all this time. So, guys, I can't overemphasize that. What are you going to do sitting in a hot house over 115 degrees? Now, we're going to see a shift in the agricultural growing zones, but remember, I talked about it through the Midwest towards Canada, guys. The wheat is barely existent. It says as the desert reclaims the Southwest and the atmospheric superheats, the entire agricultural map of North America shifts violently. The current zones on the left, Imperial Valley for vegetables. The U.S. Midwest is the Corn Belt. Southern Canada, Upper Plains, guys. All of that area will be affected. Now, with a 6.3 degree Fahrenheit jump, the Imperial Valley will become a hyper-arid wasteland, dead. In the Midwest and the Corn Belt, heat stress, frequent crop failures. We're seeing it now. Southern Canada, Upper Plains, new subtropical temperature or temperate corn belt moving further north to get out of the heat. It says it will be the death of the Southwest baseline. The Imperial Valley and Mexico's northern farming sectors will experience summer temperatures so extreme that plants will physically drop the blossoms and refuse to fruit. They know that they cannot supply the moisture needed to produce fruit. The soil moisture will drop to near zero, rendering agriculture impossible without an enormous volume of water. And the collapse of the Midwest Corn Belt. It says Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, which have been getting some tough tornadoes, guys, will face a climate similar to current day deep Texas. Extreme summer heat waves right at the pollination stage will cause widespread, systematic crop failures for corn and soybeans, destroying the bedrock of U.S. livestock feed. Of course, the price of everything goes up, and it will be a forced shift north. The ideal growing zones for staple crops will migrate hundreds of miles north, again, Canada, the Dakotas, Minnesota. While these create a new agricultural frontier in the north, the transformation will take decades because northern soils lack the deep, rich organic matter found in the traditional Midwest. Guys, when you got heat advisories, you got red flag warnings, wind warnings all through this area. This is the Four Corners right here. Look, red flag warning, extreme heat warnings. Now, we had this orange here from the heat problems on top of Mississippi, or most of it, for the last few days. Now we've got flash flood watches and warnings. Again, I am not complaining to our Father about this. I've been through just the opposite. I'm just not going to do it. Let it rain, let it flood, just get you a lifeboat and a good canoe. That's all I can tell you, because let it rain. I do not want what's happening in many places to happen here, not yet. Now, let's look at the satellite image over this area. You're seeing a little moisture here in Mexico coming up into Arizona, Texas, right in here, but it's very high and it's very thin. I don't think it's hitting the ground. You can see some of it trying to form along the mountain ridges. It's just not enough moisture. But right in here is the tropical system, and it's going to spin right back out if the models hold up and keep this moisture line flowing. But you can see it even on this map moving across the nation, how much drier it is. And you see these specks, guys, right here? That's not rain clouds. That is evaporation because it's been raining and the sun is very hot above it. It was already in the 90s before we got the sprinkles this morning. And, man, it's wonderful. We're at 77, real feel 77, even though the humidity is 99. Can't beat it. But this is going to, as soon as this moisture is gone, guys, again, these little specks, we see it all across the south all the time. In the morning, it'll be bright, sunny, and then you get a little overcloud. That's just the evaporation. The sad part is there's not much to evaporate here in the southwest except from the reservoirs. And this pretty much explains it. Like I said, you've got some clouds over in the southwest, but when you see these blue and light green, you're very lucky to even see that hit the ground. You'll think you're maybe going to get it, you just don't. But now we're, again, starting to see it move into our area, and you can see where it's coming up out of Mexico. Now, this is going to be great for the lower Rio Grande Valley. You're going to be flooded, though, but you're going to get some moisture, and that's, you can't have both. And the extremes on either side are rough. I understand that. But, again, at least you can gather some water and whatever else you need to do, cool off with it, store it. That's my best idea I can give anyone in this entire map. You see this blessing our Father's putting in here in early June in the first half. If this is not here in the end of this week or by the end of June, you're going to start to see everything get worse here, guys. So save it now. Get as many rain barrels as you can. Let them start filling up. Even if you have to pump water into your rain barrels out of your water hose outside just to fill them up, you can filter that water. You know, I don't like tap water, but I'll sure filter it and drink it because I do it daily. And so that would be the rainwater mixed in with a little tap water is not going to hurt you. I think it's a couple of teaspoons per like a 50-gallon jug or something like that, or barrel. It's not much of chlorine. You can look that up to keep it safe to drink. But people, if you don't see this blue gold floating above you and realize how important it is to your survival, you're going to be in for a shock. If you just remember 3 or 4 years back when this high dome was right here and all this moisture was coming up under the Great Lakes and coming back out into the Atlantic, every one of us were praying for just a few drops. It was so hot. And if you had a lot of animals, you really had to be extra careful. So anyway, guys, I'm not going to make this any longer. Just want to emphasize, again, get your water together. With water, you can grow a little bit. You know, if it's just a few plants out in the yard or on your porch, you've got a little rainwater, and keep them going, a little bit of food. And please, look into some of the smaller solar systems. Most of them are financeable. You can spread that out. You're looking at less than $1,000 in some of them, more in some of the systems, depending on how much power you want. But make sure you have the battery, the solar panels, and the inverter combiner controller that will handle a 5,000 ACU for at least overnight. And again, your batteries will get you through most of that, but you got to charge them during the daytime, right? Anyway, guys, we're watching this. You watch it. Like I say, our Father loves you. I love every one of you. And this is a major heads up. You guys be safe.